quite the big one, the so-called Trump victory on all NATO members pretty much signing on to committing to 5% of GDP for defense. And this is not good news for Mr. Putin as well. I imagine Putin has had a few sleepless nights ever since the escalation in the Middle East. Let us not forget that the changes in Syria has forced the Russian presence mostly out of Syria. It's had to scramble to get new positions in Northern Africa, for example, for force projection in that part of the world. But also in Iran, let's also not forget that Russia signed a strategic partnership with Iran in January. It had Russian specialists in the hundreds on the ground helping Iran develop its very dangerous nuclear program. And of course, Iran was a big supplier of drones and missiles and munitions to Russia. The biggest supply, of course, was the Shahed 136 drones. But now that kind of transfer the influence of the transfer on the war in Ukraine has lessened because Russia has, as it does, copied a lot of the technology, received training from the Iranians, and now it has massive drone production in the Alabuka Special Economic Zone. And it's said to have a stockpile of about 13,000 missiles and producing about 200 a month. So while it's lessened its dependence on Iran, it's also has retained a very robust relationship with North Korea for ammunition, for missiles and men, and finally also China in terms of dual-use technology and also help with developing that special economic zone where the drones and other munitions are being made. So having said all that, the good news for Ukraine is that, the Russians are still scrambling because developments after the U.S. involvement in Iran, such as in NATO and at the G7, have shifted the ground quite a bit for Russia and the U.S. stance on the war in Ukraine. Russia and Iran have a strategic partnership, and Russia was basically impotent during this whole time. It was not able to come to the aid of the clerics in Tehran at its most desperate moment. And this, of course, sends a signal to other allies, which few remain, other allies of Russia, that they cannot be depended upon. But again, it's such a complicated shifting of landscape right now, because having said that, working in Russia's favor is that for quite some time, 2 weeks perhaps, the attention on Russia's war in Ukraine had shifted towards the Middle East. And I've been in Odessa most of that time, and that has allowed Mr. Putin to take advantage, exploit that void to even intensify his strikes on Ukrainian cities. I mean, we have seen strikes in the magnitude of hundreds and hundreds of drones with ballistic missiles mixed in on cities like Dnipro, most recently in Zaporizhia, but also Kiev and Odessa, that have caused massive, massive damage. And it reminds us that Russia, again, is not running out of those drones and missiles. In fact, since it's mostly stopped receiving drones from Iran, it's actually managed to improve these drones, putting more explosives on them, making them faster and much more lethal. Sure, it's been very interesting. On the one hand, I did talk about the shift in focus from Ukraine to the Middle East. Also, air defense systems have had to be moved from the U.S. to Israel, and I believe even air defense systems headed for Ukraine diverted to Israel to help them. And also what's happened in the United States, you may recall in the run-up to the escalation in the Middle East, U.S. Senator Lindsey Graham had proposed a draconian bill that would levy a 500% tariff on countries that buy Russian oil. That has now basically disappeared. But what is good news is that the folks in the Trump administration that have been very anti-war, have been "Make America Great Again, let's focus on the United States." They've been basically sidelined. They have been told, "Shut up," and let the president do what he thinks is best. And that included, for example, helping Israel push Iran to get rid of its nuclear program. And we saw, amazingly, at the recently concluded NATO summit in The Hague, is that President Trump said, "Yes, I understand Ukraine needs more air defense systems." He actually said it with real emotion this time, and that he will do everything he can to get those to Ukraine to create that kind of shield against those Russian missiles. And also, there are other things kind of in the background that aided Ukraine, declarations of support for Ukraine at the NATO summit. I think that also was pushed by by Mr. Trump. And then finally, quite the big one, the so-called Trump victory on all NATO members pretty much signing on to committing to 5% of GDP for defense. And this is not good news for Mr. Putin as well. His spokesperson has said as much, and they also finally redeclared their commitment to Article 5. An attack on one NATO member is attack on all. So that would also contribute to Mr. Putin's sleeplessness, I believe. It's something that Ukrainians ask themselves a few times every day. I can assure you of that. When will Mr. Trump do more? For the moment, I think everyone has to be satisfied that at least the United States has not canceled its military support for Ukraine, also its provision of intelligence sharing. That's really, really important. And also continuing that flow of Patriot air defense systems. But there's a lot more that could be done. I personally feel that Mr. Trump is afraid of Mr. Putin. I think Mr. Trump, as well as the new Chancellor of Germany, Mr. Merz, are continuing to fall for Mr. Putin's bluffs that perhaps one day he will use tactical nuclear weapons. So in order for this war to end, maximum pressure needs to be applied. And we're not seeing that coming either from Mr. Trump or from the EU capitals. And what I mean by that is not only military aid, but really tightening that noose to the maximum, where money from, for example, oil sales would be constrained. So the war machine that Mr. Putin has wouldn't be able to survive anymore. It involves, for example, Germany actually allowing Ukraine to use its very powerful Taurus missiles to put out of action once and for all that Kerch bridge. That is a very, very important conduit for Russian military aid to get to Crimea to be used in the Ukraine war. Finally, I know I've criticized sanctions in the past, but if all of the allies got together, if Mr. Trump, for example, said to the Gulf states, "Okay, guys, I stepped in to constrain Iran. Now you owe me. Now you're going to cut off Russia. You're not going to allow their tycoons to buy luxury property in Dubai or park their yachts there or invest in other parts of your economies. You're not going to allow aviation parts to go through the UAE. Same thing to Thailand and other countries that allow that to happen." That's what needs to happen right now, but I don't see it happening, unfortunately. So the long and short of it is that it looks like this war will continue on for quite some time, where our biggest fear right now is that the intensification of the Russian offensive could move the front line in Ukraine as much as 60 kilometers, and that could prompt an outflow of migrants, asylum seekers in the numbers of 250,000 people. So huge, huge consequences, of course, for Ukraine, but also for the rest of Europe.